shall we get going with the intros and the admin then? So welcome everybody to the first in a series of VR webinars, this one being on skills-based organizations. We're going to cover quite a bit today, but before we start, we just wanted to tell you that due to privacy reasons, we have turned off everybody's cameras and microphones. But if you do want to chat and if you want to ask any sort of questions during the webinar, please just use the Q&A function in Zoom. You can find it at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavor to either answer your questions as the webinar progresses or towards the end where we have a Q&A section. So if we move on to our agenda, we're just going to give you a quick intro about who myself and Christine are, and we're going to talk for about an hour around the skills-based organizations, how to build a business case, and how we've seen organization managing that change and what we've learned from that. So really nice to meet you. My name is Lea Ralic. I'm originally from Croatia, and that is where I'm currently sitting in the beautiful, sunny Zagreb. I have a background in HR, so I've worked across multiple roles in HR with a particular focus on talent management, and that's kind of always been my passion. So when I started to pivot my career towards being more of a systems person and more of an implementer, that is kind of where I ended up working on skills, learning, and talent over the course of the last 4 years, and really kind of enjoying the journey that I've been on with VR. So I'll hand over to my partner in crime, Christine, that I've spent the last 4 years learning from.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to see all the familiar names and also some of the new ones and some of the VR guys who are supporting us. We hope that you learned today or get out of the session that you wanted to get. We got some of the questions from some of you, and we will try address that throughout the session. I'm Christine. I'm based in the Netherlands. I am South African born. So VR, as you probably, if you don't know yet, we are quite global. So we sit across the world. I have been working in HR and in tech for many years. That will give my age away. I've also worked with Workday, which is the main system that we work on as in VR for 10 plus years. Talent and skills, I've been working with Lea for the last 4 or 5 years. And we have seen all kind of sorts of growth within companies, the stages they go through. And that's what we're trying to kind of share with you today to help you identify where you are at in your stage. And then hopefully we can give you some tips and learnings that we've picked up along the way. So VR, who are we? So VR, we are normally known for, we are very pragmatic. We are not your cookie cutter kind of partner that work with you. We like to solve problems. And that's also, I think, that you will find through this session today. We really try to be pragmatic, give you the tips and tricks that will help you actually move along and get your strategy implemented. So very much looking forward to sharing our ideas and our learnings with you today. I'm going to move on to our first kind of slide on what is today about. So a skills-driven organization. That's a very nice buzzword these days. There's lots of different meanings and definitions on it. If you ask ChatGPT, it gives you a long list of things. What does it mean to be a skills-based organization? At the core of it, what it basically means is that in the past, we used to look at a role, get fixated on you need to have a certain certification or maybe a degree to do a certain role, where that kind of shifted towards let's look at whether someone can actually do the job. What is the skills that he acquired by doing this specific job? With that kind of change of viewpoint, and what do we use to measure whether someone is capable or not to do a specific position, that also opened up a whole host of other flexibilities and opportunities for workers and for companies. So that means that workers will be more flexible because if it's about skills and you collect data point or the commodity that's skills, you will be able then to move around in your organization more, because you might use some part of your skills in one area that you can use in another area where it's part of another job. So it gives you a lot more flexibility as a worker. So a skills-driven organization is the organization that moves towards that goal point. It is an organization that understands that skills is important, and to understand the data that they can get out of their skills to know when there's a skill shortage in one area, or when workers are outperformed in one area and needs to move to another. It also makes the organization a lot more agile, and when it works with a skills-based organization. So every company is what we work with is in a different stage of that kind of progress or that journey that they go through. And for you as working in an organization that is moving towards a skills-based organization, very important for you to understand where are you in that journey and what are the building blocks that you need to get in place to get to that end goal where you have the information about skills, you know what to do with the data, and you can enable or empower your employees to use their skills to grow and develop within your company, and not always have to go outside to find that challenge that they need in order to grow. So that's basically what we see a skills-based organization is. Today, we are going to talk about the building blocks and the fundamental elements of a skills-based organization. We are going to refer to Workday as a platform a lot, but these principles you can also use in any other system that you use for your HR management these days. So keep that in mind. You don't need to have Workday for this, but our examples will be mainly based on Workday. One of the questions we got we asked all the everybody who registered, we asked you, what is the things you want to get out of that? And some of the questions that came back was they would like to understand where does skills fit into the HR organization. Now, this slide is very busy, so I'm not going to go through the detail, but it will show you kind of the different elements that link to skills. So skills become the commodity that help you to excel in all the other areas as an HR organization. It's linked to your learning. It's linked to the employee who needs to add their skills. It's linked to your job catalog, because if you think about skills, it's always that two sides of the coin situation. Employee have to have something in order to be matched to something else. You have to have skills on your profile in order to match to a job that have skills. And then different tools, as you see today, enable you to do that. But there's always like one side have to have something to be able to match to another side. So it's linked to your talent, it's linked to your recruiting, and of course, the skills forms the heart of this whole kind of ecosystem where skills is the commodity that moves around in HR. So if we then look at where are we going with skills-based organizations, how to build a business case, Lael will take us through some of those steps of how we can get to that.
So
point.
Thank you, Christine. So yeah, this is just a little bit of a representation of all of the different versions that we've seen companies kind of think of and take different approaches to building that business case. So similarly to how we just saw skills being a bit of a center point that you can pivot all of the different functions and HR people functions around. Different companies that we've worked with have taken different approaches to building that business case. But one of the first ones that we typically see and that we typically work with everybody on is, what is the technology and data infrastructure? And the reason for that is because it is so fundamental to how you work with skills, how you utilize skills, how you analyze them, and how you gather those insights. Even if it doesn't seem like something that is a natural first step, and usually really becomes something that we start talking about fairly early on, because as soon as you start asking questions around things like, where do you house certain data, or how do you integrate different data between, or how do you analyze data from different systems, it starts to become a little bit more complicated, and people start to realize that it's something that needs to be thought about fairly early on in understanding how to adopt a more skills-based approach, and in understanding how to really maximize those outcomes if you do put in the work and the incredible effort that is needed to really pivot to a skills-based organization. So there is no one size fits all here. There genuinely isn't. There are many different versions of what will work for many different organizations due to really varied skills requirements across them, where we have some that are deeply technical and some that are just more of a like a general business skills type organizations. And for these different requirements, different infrastructure is needed. But what is really important to start thinking about as you start building your business case is, what does that look like for your organization? How are you going to make that work? Now, the next big piece of work in building that business case is that part around skill identification and mapping. So, what are skills for you? How will you measure them? How do you validate that someone has a skill that they say they have, or how do you validate that the manager who has rated someone on a skill has genuinely done that in a good way? So, again, answers to those questions are not one size fits all, and different organizations will take different approaches. But it is definitely needed to ask those questions and start answering them before you can really build kind of the business case around why you want to pivot to a skills-based organization and what sort of benefits you want to gain from that. The other part of that work as well contains the identification and mapping of what are the critical skills and what are the strategic skills that your organization needs right now and in the future, and start connecting those with the jobs that need to be done. That is typically a piece of work that gets underestimated in terms of size and scope, and also gets underestimated in terms of how many bakers have fingers in that pie. So that's something that really is quite an organizational level kind of change in thinking that needs to happen. And that is something that we start to work with people on to really understand the value of bringing skills and where they can all be used and how they can all be used. Now, once you've kind of built up those very fundamental building blocks, you can start thinking about what are the different benefits that you can gain from having done all of that work already, and what are the different kind of elements that you want to prioritize that you want to gain from doing all that work. So one of the things that we typically see, and is the first thing that everyone thinks about when they think about skills-based organization, is development. So investing in skills development is crucial. I think that's just a no-brainer. Everyone knows that. But as the world has become more personalized, as everyone's algorithms have become, very personal to them, employees are typically expecting more of that personalization and more of that kind of specificity in their working lives as well. And again, that sort of past approach where you deploy large learning programs and you sometimes had people sitting there and thinking, why am I really here? Is this really going to help my development? By unlocking some of that skills developments and skills-based organization, you really can start personalizing that content and start personalizing the development that people go through, and also give them a choice out of all of the different offerings that you have in place. That is something that really kind of becomes a bit of a carrot, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, for people to start really trusting you with their data and updating that and kind of getting in that rhythm of developing themselves and owning their development. The other few things that were also kind of the connectors that we've seen are typically performance management, talent acquisition, and reward strategy. And again, becoming a skills-based organization, building that business case, I think it's really important to start thinking about from very early on, what are the key benefits and what are the first benefits that you want to achieve? Because I think trying to achieve everything at once is always going to be really ambitious. But if we think about, for example, performance management, we all know the traditional methods of, you set your goals, you have a midpoint check-in, and maybe at the end you have a formal, you did well this year, great job. And that really doesn't work at all today, and people and organizations have started to shift away from that. And they've taken, again, many different approaches to how performance management is going to be done in the future. Having a benefit of kind of pivoting towards a more skills-based approach, you can ensure that those evaluations take into account the focus for growing your skills and really help people manage how they grow their skills and prioritize that through that performance process. Talent acquisition, equally, really important to understand what skills are required in the jobs that you have today and also in the jobs that you're likely to have in the future. So hiring and keeping talent becomes a little bit easier because you can become a little bit more granular. And typically, focusing on actual skills over just the past experience that people have really can lead to improved outcomes and improved flexibility for people, both internally and from external markets. In terms of reward strategy, this is also something that we see kind of companies think about when they move towards being a skills-based organization, because I think there's a very sort of intuitive conclusion that different skill sets currently do require different reward strategies, and those skill sets that are more in demand and that are more kind of constrained in the market, that are more difficult to build or buy or borrow, require a different reward strategy. But I think a lot of companies haven't really thought about what that looks like and haven't really kind of gone through the whole thinking process of what that's going to be like in the future. And helping kind of build that skills-based approach can help you be more practical around how that reward strategy is going to be structured, and how you're going to make sure that kind of you understand and you know what are those skill sets that are kind of on the way out and what are the skill sets that are more in demand. And then finally, one of the things that gets really underestimated, I think, in terms of kind of the benefits of going towards a more skills-based approach is the culture shift. So adapting and adopting skills-based approaches is not easy. It is a journey, and there is a lot of learnings to be had on the way. But one of the things that kind of happens naturally as you go through this process is that carrot that we talked about, the employee development that you get to own, becomes a lot more prominent for people, and it becomes something that they genuinely can own. And that does lead to a culture shift towards becoming a more transparent and a more equitable kind of organization. Just in terms of having the visibility of skills and having the visibility of the different development opportunities that are there for you. So in terms of building the business case, you've got a lot of options here, and you've got a lot of options to start prioritizing what it is that you want to do first, or what are the things that you kind of want to maybe get a bit more mature in terms of skill-based organizations before you start tackling them. But whatever you do, that is a long journey. So if we can move to the next slide, this is something that we use with many clients. So the moving from a sort of a jobs-based approach to a skills-based approach, as we said, is not something that you can do in a sprint. You can do it in different sprints, or you can do it in a series of sprints, but you cannot do it in one sprint. And you do need to recognize just how much of a journey this is, and just how much change this is, not just for employees, but also for managers and for HR, and not underestimate kind of how much you're going to need to adapt some of the ways that you do things. So this journey that we have here represents a typical journey, or a version of a journey towards a skills-based organization for an organization that utilizes Workday. But as Christine has mentioned already, the primary purpose of this journey isn't really just to talk about the technology. It's any technology, kind of, you're going to have to go through some of these different elements as well. So usually organizations already have some sort of a basic talent element in place, talent data that you collect and that you've collected for a very long time already. Things like succession planning, things like, potential of employees, potential next steps, etc. Things that, are just regarded as quite traditional talent management. And they are still quite important building blocks that can guide you on starting that skills-based journey. And particularly those employee data points that can help employees when they start building the skills. And so when you start the skills journey, when you enable what is in Workday, the skills functional areas and skills cloud, or in other technologies, the skills functionality, those data points that you already have on people, what their education is, what their previous jobs were, et cetera, they can help employees with suggestions and inferences on what their potential skills could be, which is a great starting point for employees to start thinking about what they want to do, what they want to add, and what they want to be known for. So typically that's kind of how it goes. You start, asking people, what skills you have, what are the skills that you want. And then typically you need to give them something that is kind of the quid pro quo. So what is in it for me? Why should I be putting in those skills and those skills interests, and how you're going to use that? And typically that's when we see companies kind of orienting towards focusing on employee development tools. In Workday, again, that is primarily Career Hub, where you can get matched to jobs, you can get matched to short-term opportunities known as gigs or flex teams. You can also get matched to mentors or different connections or learning. So there's a lot more personalization in your experience of how you access the development that's available in your company, if you put in some of that work to add your skills. But that's not where it ends, obviously, because where there's an employee, there's always a manager, and that manager needs to know what their employees are doing, what they want to do, where they want to develop, and how to use that information to help them navigate the organization. Which again, in Workday, that typically includes activating the Manager Insights Hub, where a manager has a bit of a kind of all-in-one view of what their employees are working on, what their employees' goals are, checkpoints, but also what their skills are, what their suggested learnings or short-term projects could be, which serves as a great sort of starting point to have those kind of regular checkpoints and discussions around what employee development looks like for them. And then finally, where there are managers, there's also HR or people functions. And in order to successfully operate as a skills-driven organization, you do need to adapt some of those processes to be more based around that skills data and around that kind of continuous updating. So things like succession, planning for your key roles, planning for your strategic roles, things like recruitment, we've already talked about. That is something that can really be unlocked by using skills, especially internally, but also externally, understanding where you buy, where you build. That is really important from a workforce planning perspective. Of course, learning, development, kind of all of that internal opportunity that you can take up. HR needs to know about it. HR needs to have the data and really be able to be on top of that, and help guide both managers and employees on their journeys. So that is just kind of a very typical journey that we see, and it doesn't take a month. It's very unique to each organization how long it takes and what sort of hurdles they come across on the way. But ideally, that is something that you want to get to where you have that data available. So with that, we've been through that journey a couple of times, and we've learned a lot. So I'm going to let Christine tell you a little bit about what we've learned.
Thank you, Leo. Yes, we have learned a lot. So I have highlighted some of the key things that we came across and some things to maybe think about when you are on your journey. The first point, what is in it for me? So we often work with a client who have implemented some of these kind of tools, have been through the journey, maybe halfway through, maybe a bit later, and then they don't get the adoption that they think they expected to have. And then we always remind them, think about the employee. What is in it for the employee? You as an employee, if you take in your current situation, what will make you go outside of your normal day job into a system to start adding skills or play around with potential new opportunities or development or look at learning courses? What is the carrot that will drive you doing that? And that is what when you start this program, think about your change. That's part of your change management. What is the thing that will get people to go in? Because it's something in addition to what the worker is doing today. He's not going to naturally just go and go to a system and add some more skills or play around in a new tool. They need to have what is that in the end. So make sure that you make that clear to your users. That is also where the journey needs to be break up in chunks. So take a small bit at a time and make clear to the user how to grow into this journey so that they can in the end understand what is it they get out of it. So make sure you have that, what is the carrot, what is in it for me. Then, very important, this journey is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We often come across organizations that feel they are behind the curve. They need to move quickly and they want to implement a load of new features all at the same time. Remember that users need to get used to that. It's a culture change. It is something that you can't just adopt in an overnight. So think about your journey and which chunks you want to do first. Yes, you can enable the functionality, but maybe focus on one area in your change communication so that users can first get used to, why should I add a skill? What is the benefit I get out of a skill? Before you go into, you can also have a mentor, you can also have a short-term project or a gig, or you can also find an internal job. So focus on, decide which area you're going to focus on and build the picture for the user to get used to the change. And it's not just about the employees, it's also about HR that now needs to manage a new tool, need to manage new data that comes in. So make sure that you understand, like, what is the journey you're going to go through, and be very realistic about it. Then a question that I often raise is, what does the data tell you? Workday and any other system that you use, the reason you put data into a system is you need to do something with it. Your end result is, what is the analytics or the insights telling you, so that you can make those decisions that you want that data to drive. So when you think about your skills, what do you want the skills data to tell you? What is the skills that's important for you as an organization? And make sure that you put the measures in place in order to report on that. That is something that is often overlooked by clients, is that they get focused on the tool, they get focused on the technology and the new features that they can add, but they don't think about, what do I want to do with it? It might be a very nice, shiny tool to play with, but is it really something that you're going to do? Are you going to use the data for something? Then often the decision is, maybe we don't put it in because we're not going to use the data for anything. So rather simplify for the user than adding more complexity to their lives if you're not going to use it. Then have you ask why not? So again, very typical from projects, we get so focused on delivering the project, we forget to ask the actual end user, what is it that they want, or why are they not using the tool that we designed? We usually start kind of a project with, this is the aim that we want to get. We want to get an adoption once we launch within the first month of 20%. We launch the product and there's a 5% kind of uptake, and then we feel, what did we do wrong? But they don't go to the users. So ask your users, why are they not using it? And start user groups. Start your kind of a small kind of technical user group that you can ask questions and help them test you and help spread the word on why you're using a certain tool. So very important. Don't forget to go back to the basics and ask the questions. Then often, if we also once you go live and you don't get the kind of the uptake that you expected, we often ask you, what did you base your expectations on? Again, we very regularly find that it was just something that they came up with. There was no base that they or like data that they used to create or to say, why do we want a 20%, for instance, uptake? So also go revisit, what is your expectations based on, and is it based on something that could be measurable, and was it realistic? Maybe that will then change also the way you approach your change approach. And then lastly, and very important for us, that we often also had to highlight, is it's a system, it's not a magical unicorn. We hear about AI, Gen AI, machine learning a lot. Every system claims that they are the one that do it best. But in the end, we need to remember that you cannot get the end result if there is no human interaction. You as a company still need to understand, what is my skill strategy? I need to understand which skills are important for me as an organization. No system is going to tell you that. They might give you options, but if you have no idea which ones is the right ones to choose, or which ones are the ones that's important for me, you'll just have a set of data that you don't know what to do with. On the other side, you also need to give guidance to your workers. You need to let employees know for this specific role that you are in or this specific area that you're working in. These are the skills that we find is really important for the strategy for this company. So regardless all the tools that help you automate and bring maybe data to you in the front, you also as organization need to make sure that you still don't forget to have that human interaction. Curation of skills for employees and for HR is super important. And without having that curated skill set, or at least an understanding of what you are driving towards, you will just have a set of data and you would not even know whether it's a good suggestion that the AI push to your workers or to your HR or not, because you have no idea what you're working with. So often that means taking a step back, revisiting your program, and making sure that you actually have that fundamental building blocks in place to understand where is it that we're going and why are we saying that we think XYZ skill is important for us. So these are some of the lessons that we learned. There is quite a lot more. I'm happy to have conversations with you guys separately after this webinar, but these are the most important ones that we thought might be useful for you to know. We also picked up some best practices, which Leah will take us through, that will just help you kind of maybe bring the whole picture back together.
Yeah. So as we've talked about already, I think the first one is obviously change. Change programs in this area often get kind of underestimated in terms of their size and scope. Often get, you get HR really excited about all these different data points that they're going to have, and then you kind of land, and it's not always what you expected, and people aren't always seeing what the carrot is and what is the benefit for them. So you do have to always keep in mind that skills is not really the story that you're talking about. Skills is just a vehicle towards the story. And the story is always going to be the career development and growth. It's always going to be showing your employees, walking that talk, showing your employees that if they do this, they can really get different opportunities, more opportunities than maybe were traditionally available to them. And that is really what unlocks the desire for people to go in and to start doing these things. And it's really important to keep that in mind throughout that change journey and throughout all of the marathon, and not just at the beginning or at the end. Another one, best practice that we've seen, and that is something that is usually a discussion with different stakeholders in the companies that we work with, is your skills profile. Now, there's a couple of different approaches you can take, right? You can put all of your skills on the profile. You can, put 50 skills and list everything that you've ever kind of learned. And that we've found doesn't always work for this particular use case, because if the story is career development and growth, and if the story is where you're going in your career, then adding those skills that you want to be known for, that you want to be found for, that you want to be matched on is really important. And having a clear set of guidance for employees and for managers on how to guide the employees on that approach is really, really important, and can really help those change approaches and those adoption approaches, because it makes it quite tangible. Another one we get into a lot, another discussion, is the skills proficiency and verification. So as I stated in the beginning, different companies have loads of different kind of requirements for how strict, let's say, their skills verification has to be in different areas. We all know things like manufacturing are, there are some things that are very, very, compliance driven in that area. And for that, you might not want to use a skills approach. You might want to use a more competency approach. So having a real view on what you're going to be using it for, and how you're going to get that validation of those skills in place is something that should be a discussion to be had in the beginning, and often something that gets overlooked. Now, Christine's already talked about measures. The data, what does the data tell you? Why are you asking that question? And what are you going to do with that data? What insights are you going to drive? And how are those insights going to influence your overall business strategy and direction? We often ask questions, but what if we could have this, or what if we could have that, or what if we could have a measure of, how many people are on a level 4 in this particular skill in an organization? And just creating that report isn't necessarily the more difficult part. The more difficult part is knowing what you're going to do with that and how is that really going to help you kind of shape the strategy and shape people's kind of understanding of the strategy. So defining what your measures of success are really clearly, really transparently, and early on, and making sure that those are transparently communicated to the people who need to know them in the organization is genuinely something that can make or break a program of this type. Integrations we've talked about. We're not going to get too technical on this, but they are a really important element to think about if you have an ecosystem that spans more than one system. And again, most companies do. So thinking about how you integrate, what you integrate, and where you're going to analyze that data, really important to get those questions out of the way and make sure that there is a common ground and a common understanding of how that's going to happen. And then finally, innovations. So we're seeing, probably the biggest revolution in technology in the last, probably, I would say 20 years, with AI, Gen AI, large language models kind of becoming a dime a dozen, making sure that you understand what they do, how they operate, and what you need to do to make them successful in your organization is something that we're all figuring out and that we're all learning about. And it's really important to keep that culture of learning at the heart of managing those innovations and understanding and adopting those innovations. One of the things we typically see with machine learning is HR has a bit of an anxiety around letting go of control, because typically in HR, you have quite a tight grip on the things that employees see and they do, and there's a lot of care and effort and time put into those communications. With machine learning, you're not always going to know 100% why someone's been suggested something. And you are going to have to get a little bit more used to that kind of ambiguity and the learning, both of the systems and HR people and employees and managers, and getting more flexible in that area is really important to make sure that you're getting the best out of the innovations that are coming in this space. So yeah, that's just a bit about best practices and that we've seen work for different companies. And yeah, I'll hand back to Christine to complete our presentation.
Yeah, so this was the information we wanted to share with you. We hope that was very useful. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We will be doing the Q&A right after this. I just wanted to kind of let you know what is coming up next in case you are interested. We will have a series in the next month about Prism Analytics. One of our use cases is the skills visibility. So if you want to see how we've built a Prism dashboard, to show you the insights, what you can get. And usually we see that right at the end of your journey, when you've collected all the data points, you have your employees engaged, then you can actually use that data to really give you tangible insights. And we are very proud of the dashboard, and I think you would also find it very interesting if you are in the skill space. So please attend our series. There will also be a webinar where we will show you the ins and outs of how the dashboard was built. And then we have a skills industry user group. Please let us know if you want to be part of that. We will have a slide where you can scan our contact details with a QR code. Let us know if you want to be part of the group, and we'll include you. And this is just an informal group that gets together and we discuss kind of the obstacles and the challenges we go through while trying to develop the skills-based organization. So I am going to go to the contact slide, but we are open for Q&A. So if anyone have any questions they want to ask, we can then go through them and see if we can answer some of your questions. So
Yeah, don't be shy, guys.
Yes.
No questions for now. And so we'll stay on for a couple more minutes. Oh, we've got a hand up.
Okay.
Let's see. Justine. Oops. Justine.
I think, can you hear me, Leah?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. It's Leo here. I'm part of Justine's team. I got a link from her. Thanks, Justine, by the way.
Great.
Great session and great to see you again. We worked together, GSK. Lovely to see you again. A quick one about if you could share some of the practices that you're seeing out there about what the companies are doing to monitor the skills in the workday. So once the worker inputs the skill in workday, it's a kind of difficult to monitor how accurate those skills are. So maybe we're going to map and you're going to think that you have that skill in a certain region or even globally, but then in reality you don't quite have that exact skill or even the level of the skill that you need. So if you have some stories around this, I would really appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nay, do you want to take this one? Or?
Yeah, I can definitely start. So that's one of the things that we've talked about, right? What is the level of skill verification? In Workday, you've got a couple of different options. You can have skills being endorsed, and you can have skills being rated, and that sort of calculates that level. A lot of the times we do see that can be quite a burden, I guess, or quite a lot of work for employees and managers to make sure that that's kept up to date. We have seen companies utilize some external technologies as well to go out to the external market. Probably not the best thing to say scrape the data, but access data externally from the company to verify whether that skill is actually present. Again, there's pros and cons to that approach. And then finally, in Workday, some of the things that we have on that skills dashboard are meant exactly to answer that question. So how to make sure that that skill is present and that those skills are updated. So we measure some of the trends and we utilize Prism to help you gain a bit more insight into how that skill was added to the profile and when it was last added, and data points like that can help you determine whether it is actually still relevant. Don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Christine.
Yeah, so I think it is very much reporting. So that's where if you collect the data, what do you do with the data? If you are interested to know what skills exist in a certain region, reports will show you that. If you want to validate, does a person actually really have the skill? We found that it's more useful if you have multiple points of reference than just one. So in Workday, for instance, there's like 4 or 5 ways for you to rate or to kind of endorse a skill. So multiple places for a worker to have the confirmation that they have the skill. Saying that, you can lie. Same as you lie on your CV. The proof is in the pudding. So you will have to have other measures. For instance, if it is very technical, so if you have factories, for instance, you have to have a very technical skill. You have to have another way to also measure that the person really have the skill. Can he operate a forklift? There should be ways to that, and you can use the different reference points then to bring it together again in reporting to say he has got the tick that he can do. He can manage a forklift. That's been done. It's the legal kind of compliance side. He also have the skill in his profile, and he have, say, out of 5, he has a 4 out of 5 for his capability in the skill. Bring the two together, and then you can build kind of a model where you say it gives a kind of a RAG status or a flag or a rating. So I think in that case, I would say use reporting plus your data points. Make sure you collect the right data, and then to visualize it for yourself. Not sure whether that helps, and that's what you.
It did. It really did. It really did. And this multiple sources, it's a great idea. So to compare reports and really confirm that population individual has that skill. Thanks so much. Really insightful. Cheers.
Thank you.
And just to add, that's also where you kind of the foundational blocks come into play. So it's a fond of knowledge that you build over time. So if you have skills in your jobs and on your flex teams, for example, people who have experience in those jobs or have been in a particular job and have been successful at that job for years, you can probably say with a bit more validity that they have got that skill. So it is something that you are also going to build over time as you build the different foundational elements of your data.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
I think we don't have any, so we can give people a bit of time back in their days, get a bit of coffee or lunch or dinner or breakfast, depending on where you are in the world.
Thank you so much for attending our session, and hopefully that was helpful. We'd love your feedback. Thank you.